How have you worked with DC Comics in developing the game's story?
So it's been great actually working with them. In many ways, when we first started off, the concept of a Crisis-style game, we talked to them about it, and they were like, oh, this is really good. Why don't you see where you can go with that? And that's where we started pushing into the concepts of these worlds. And each of these different worlds has their own themes and heroes and villains and really kind of unifying concepts that they really got behind and were like, this really works really well. Like, what works for the game is that unity that we have with the concepts of the Prime characters unified with these distorted mirror worlds that DC has very much embraced and has been worked with us really, really closely on. So I would say there are a lot of challenges, but the one that always jumps out to me is you really want to try to find a way to make a person care about the character that they're running around and playing with, combined with the fact that you also need to make a game that is both fun to watch and that is an actual viable sport in the sense that it's equal. Like, balance is always the thing that's very, very important for these types of games, and I feel like balance is a clear front runner when it comes to that. But the concept of having a game that is both fun to play and watch is just as important, if not more so, because you can get to balance over time, but if your game isn't fun to play and watch, then you're never going to get there because who wants to play that game? I see a lot of different opportunities for it in terms of, obviously we've run a lot of tournaments already and we're going to run tournaments as we move forward. So I think that, for me at least, esports are driven by your community as a whole. And if people are very interested in playing at a high tier, a high level of competitiveness, that's when I feel like our esports team will really finally hit its maturity and can really go. For now, we're running all these tournaments, and that's great because we have a lot of really, really rabid fans. But I think there's a whole other tier that we can eventually get to once enough people have seen our game and really understand what makes it fun and what makes it good. So I would say that right up front, one of the things that already, like just by virtue of us having the name we have and the characters that we have, we are inherently going to be seen as more approachable. A lot of people who are on the fence about games, like such as esports or MOBAs, are going to see a game where they can play Superman or they can play Batman, the characters they grew up with as children, and they're going to be significantly more interested already. Which means that we're going to have a lot of people who don't have a layer of depth with these games that perhaps other folks will. So inherently, that means that our player communities can be very, very different. And that's okay. I mean, it'll be good to have a bunch of people who are there playing this game for the first time and just learning how to actually play it, learning its depth as they go through. I think that on one tier, for people who are really, really, really into those games, the esports scene allows for one shared community experience where everyone who's into them can all sit down and watch them together. And I think that's really big because kind of like the Super Bowl or any other sport, when you have something that everyone is sitting around and experiencing, you generally have a tighter community because other folks are talking about the same things. You also educate a lot more people. And I feel like that's a big one just because that's another vehicle for other folks who may not understand what this game is about. They can then sit down with those same friends who can talk about how awesome these plays that they're seeing unfold really are, and the amount of skill it actually takes to actually make them happen. So one of the ways right up front is obviously in our character design. Just our champions design, they need to feel like those characters. Like Batman needs to feel like a Batman character does. Same with Superman. Additionally, on top of that, we basically add a lot of different mechanics that we want to make it so that you don't ever not want to help your team. You don't ever not want to participate in a fight. Like, those are the types of things that in a lot of existing MOBAs, there are a lot of times where the obvious answer is in fact the wrong answer for you to take. And nothing makes you feel less super heroic than standing around outside not fighting things because the fact that fighting something is bad. So that was one example right up front. We wanted to make sure, made a clear transition and clear differentiator between us and other games.